what I think is a smart way to use Amazon is to use it as an acquisition channel. Expose some of your product to your customers so that they get a taste. But if you want to have access to all of our SKUs, all of the limited sunglasses we drop that are super fun, you got to come to our site.
Hey everyone, this is Nazar Akil from Max Pro.
Hi, I'm Linda.
And I'm Paul.
And we're Love and Pebbles.
Hi, this is Lopa Vandermersch from Rasa.
Oh, you're listening to,
And you are listening to the E-Comm Show.
Welcome to the Ecommerce Show, presented by BlueTuskr, the #1 place to hear the inside scoop from other e-commerce experts, where they share their secrets on how they scaled their business and are now living the dream. Now, here is your host, Andrew Maff.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Ecom Show. As usual, I'm your host, Andrew Maff, and today I'm joined by Greg Bicksler of Goodr Sunglasses. Greg, how you doing? You ready for a good show?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I am a big fan of your brand, so I'm super excited to have you on this call. Plus, I also know with your role as head of supply chain, going to be very interesting to hear how you manage all of that fun stuff as of right now. Plus, you do not have a small product line. But let's get into it. Let's pretend that no one knows who you are, no one knows who Goodr is, and and why don't you just give us a little bit about your background? We'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So, a bit about me. I started my career as a management consultant. I bounced around. I was at Booz Allen for a while, and then I worked for A.T. Kearney for a number of years. My focus as a consultant was primarily on operational efficiency as a broad lens, but I really started anchoring in and focusing on supply chain operations as a whole towards the end of my time there. And I realized if I was doing all these cool projects, I didn't have a ton of ownership of what I was working on. So my wife had been in startups for years. So I saw that she was getting all the diversity and fun stuff that I was doing, but she had all the ownership as well. So I actually jumped in. I switched out of consulting, went and started leading a supply chain for a company called Ruggable. And then during the pandemic, I switched to another company called Attitude that makes sheets, home sheets.
They were on our show a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah? Who'd you have?
No, don't ask me that question. She was the head of performance marketing. She was very awesome. It was impressive. Yeah,
Chelsea's incredible. I saw her a few weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So I was at Attitude for about 2 years, and then about a year ago, I switched to join Goodr. So Goodr is a company that quite simply makes active $25 active sunglasses for everyone. That's kind of the tagline, but when you drill into that, what does that mean? We make a product that is incredible. It has incredible performance, and we anchor it into the design principles of our company, which are the 4 Fs. So it has to be fun, it has to be functional, it has to be affordable, and it has to be fashionable. So if you're looking for a pair of sunglasses like that, that's basically what we do, and we do it really well.
Nice. If I were to say you are kind of like the Chubbies of sunglasses, would that be a stretch?
I don't think you've been the first person to draw that comparison. I mean, that's I talked about the product and what we do. I think that's probably a bit narrow in that we do have a lot of fun. I think our values are fun and authenticity, and that really shows through in the marketing, in our webpage, and all the crazy stuff and ways that we get involved in our different communities.
Yeah. From a marketing perspective too, it's not easy to stand out in the sunglass market. How many competitors are out there doing sunglasses? So, I didn't mean it as a negative thing. I think it's awesome. Your content's great. I love it. But all right, so you're on the supply chain side. Tell me a little bit about that, because I can only imagine how complicated that is, because you're dealing with a very inexpensive product. You're dealing with designs that go in and out of trends that have to get changed all the time. I can only imagine what it was like dealing with it over COVID. Like, why don't you give us a little bit of insight into what that's like?
Yeah, for sure. So, managing our supply chain, I think right now where we're at, our biggest pain points are really around scaling and building up a supply chain that can support the growth that we're having. We make an amazing product. Like you said, it's small, it's relatively durable, which is ideal for moving around the country and things like that. But it is a lower cost point. So that every move that we make really eats into our margin, which means we need to be really thoughtful and careful around how we're designing our supply chain, how we're buying, how we're making our moves. And I think that has translated into us really trying to level up and mature as a supply chain function really, really quickly in the last year. So those are kind of the key points around the key focuses we have right now. I mean, a huge part of what we're trying to do is to keep up with our customer demand, as I mentioned, through expanding our network and really just getting closer to them, getting product faster to them, and meeting their needs rather than seeing delayed lead times, fulfillment lead times, things like that.
Okay. So I know you guys are doing ridiculous volume. What's your process with, like, how are you managing pushing out, what I assume is hundreds of millions of dollars a year or something something ridiculous? I know you're a massive company. Like, how are you pushing out all of that product? Are you using 3PLs? Are you in your own warehouse? What platforms are you using? Like, what's that approach like?
Yeah, for sure. So we have a tech stack to support our order flow and things like that is mature. It's probably not too dissimilar from what a lot of other startups have. But on the supply chain side, a huge part of why I joined Goodr and a big initiative when I started out was we were heading into peak when I started in April. And I got to see firsthand what summer was like in our warehouse. So we have our own warehouse. It's based in Inglewood, California, but it's not big. It's pretty amazing what our DC is able to do with the square footage they have, without a WMS, without a lot of these things that a lot of other warehouses have. I mean, they do incredible volume, but our lead times were not sufficient for what our customers were demanding, especially if you live on the East Coast. So one of the big things I did, I came in and started looking for a 3PL that could help us on the East Coast. And we've been working on expanding that network and adding fulfillment partners to meet our customers' needs in the Southeast, Northeast, Texas, all the sunny states where our customers live.
Where they're at. What is your thought to ever eventually expand into just having your own warehouse in other areas, or do you think it's probably going to be more beneficial to stay with 3PLs?
I think time will tell. It really becomes a question. I feel like I've been talking about this a lot recently. It becomes a question of flexibility versus financial versus your financials, right? So I think the huge benefit of having a 3PL partner, an external network, is you can very quickly scale up your network if you need to, relative to all the CapEx outlay and standing up your own facility. You can also scale down really quickly if you need to. For the health of the business, when you're rapidly growing, it's a great configuration to have. But they are eating into your margin, right? It's a third party. It's a third party business. They typically run really efficiently, and you can get some cost savings out of things like outbound shipping, stuff like that. But at some point, at some scale, it just financially makes sense to do it on your own. So I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know exactly what we'll end up doing, but I think it's part of the beauty of working at a company that is constantly rethinking things and constantly questioning how things operate and what we should be doing, is that gives us the agility to constantly be making that consideration and plotting our future based on what makes the most sense for us.
Yeah. Well, with that, actually, so with your company, what it's like to actually, work with, everyone you've been working with at this company, what is your culture like? Like, how are you maintaining that culture? It obviously, from a marketing perspective, it looks like you guys are having a blast at all times. But
Yeah.
I also know sometimes there's things behind the curtain, but then there's also like, no, it actually is that fun. Like what is the culture like and how are you all maintaining it?
Yeah, for sure. So this is a great question. I think it's very funny. I most startups have basically the same values, right? Like they call them different things, but when you boil it down, it's the exact same set of things. And some of them live up to them, some of them don't, right? But I think what's really unique about Goodr is the core values they thought about for a very long time, and it's simple. It's fun and authenticity. So those are the two core values of the company. That's it. And there's descriptors, pillars that underpin those, but fun is it's not necessarily partying or being wild or any of the things that I think a lot of people might associate it with it, but it's being fun is being a professional, crushing what you're doing, having a vision, being really true to the brand and just kicking it out of the park. So I think that is a huge fat way that we maintain the culture is always looking at things through that lens of fun. And then authenticity, really being true to yourself, really being true to the brand, and being comfortable with failing, being comfortable with growing, things like that, I think are super important to us. The way that we maintain this is there's too many to count, to be honest. I think our leadership team probably spends more time thinking, or our executive level team spends more time thinking about people and culture than any group I've ever worked with, particularly our CEO. It's top of mind for him constantly, to the degree that he has his own podcast just about Goodr's culture. And it's super interesting. Yeah.
What's the name of that?
It's the Culture Goodr podcast.
Oh, well, that's a stupid question. Sorry.
No, it's good. And I mean, he does it. He's releasing episodes right now every 2 weeks with Sean, who has been a pillar of building the culture at Goodr. He's part of our people team. And, the two of them, to a degree, are kind of, they're not the sole owners of building the culture, but they put in countless hours and thought and effort into making it the place it is.
Yeah. Nice. Beautiful. So with that culture, obviously, sometimes the thing I find is it's difficult to, let's say, extend that culture into relationships that are sometimes outside of the business. So obviously with head of supply chain, I would imagine you're working with a lot of partners, a lot of vendors, all these different things you've got to work with. Like, do you find ways to kind of make that culture still part of what it's like to work with you? Or is that where you guys draw the line and you're like, no, we have fun. Your company's your problem?
No, it's a great question. Honestly, I think it's twofold. So and to clarify, like, being fun does not mean avoiding hard conversations. I think it actually means leaning into the discomfort and really taking on, the candor, and we owe it to each other to have those hard conversations rather than just pretending everything's okay. And I think that's how my function, my group thinks about interacting with our vendors, right? It's, we pick vendors that are a good fit for us as a culture, I think. And I think agility is a huge part of that. I think being able to have candid conversations, showing up like professionals, being reliable, those things are super important to us. So picking people that meet those criteria up front makes it a lot easier to align on those cultural elements. But then holding each other accountable for what you said you were going to do. And that means sometimes having hard conversations, yelling at one another. And at the end of the day, like, getting it done. We are on a team. But I think, that's the key is being candid, being honest, and being clear with your partners.
Yeah. So are you almost vetting like your partners and these vendors just to make sure they're a culture fit, as well as obviously that their businesses are aligned with yours?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If I think we look at
That's not
our
something you hear very often.
Yeah, I mean, I think it, but the reality of it is we look at our culture as a competitive advantage for us. And if we dilute that or we don't find partners that are going to be able to think about things the same way that we do, that's gonna be a disadvantage, or that's gonna penalize or restrict our ability to succeed as a company. So, I mean, competing on cost is one thing. That's obviously a factor whenever you're picking partners. But if you pick someone that you can't work with, it's going to fail.
Yeah. We're pivoting a little bit here.
Sure.
Where are you available? Obviously, I know you have your own website. Are you on multiple marketplaces? Are you in retail? Like, where is Goodr available for purchase?
Yeah, we have a pretty broad channel set at this point. So we have our own website. You're right. Then we are available in a lot of specialty shops. So we work with a lot of running shops, a lot of cycling shops, locally owned, 2 to 5 store kind of places. Obviously, we're also in some larger versions of that. We actually launched ski goggles this year, so we work with some ski shops and snowboard shops. But then we also have some big box partners that we work with, like REI. So we're available there. And then we do have a global network that we work with as well. So we are available in some overseas countries.
What about online marketplaces like Walmart, Target, eBay?
Yeah, so the one marketplace that we work with is Amazon, and it's in a pretty limited capacity. Candidly, we only have 2 SKUs. Well, sometimes we add a few SKUs here and there, but we typically only carry 2 SKUs on Amazon on a regular basis.
Interesting. So what's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, that decision was made before I joined, but I agree with it. So I can speak a little bit more towards my beliefs and around this as opposed to maybe broader Goodr's. But I think it's a smart approach, and I've seen this at several of the companies I've worked for. Is being really thoughtful and intentional around how you use the Amazon marketplace. For some business, and it depends on the business, right? You have to do what makes the most sense for your customers, for your fulfillment network, for your product and financials. But what I think is a smart way to use Amazon is to use it as an acquisition channel. So expose some of your product to your customers so that they get a taste of what is available. It's a great marketing platform. People are looking for sunglasses online. We'll be there. But if you want to have access to all of our SKUs, all of the limited sunglasses we drop that are super fun, like our St. Patrick's Day ones that are out, you got to come to our site. And there's a number of reasons for that. Control over the product, control over the customer experience, things like that. Obviously, Amazon eats into your margin pretty significantly. And if you lean into it too much, you also open yourself up to competing with their set of products on their marketplace as well. So I think, my preferred approach is to either keep them at a distance, use it as an acquisition channel, or not do it at all. But that's my personal preference. But I think that approach I've seen that be very effective for a number of companies.
Makes sense. I would agree with you. Especially, I think for a brand like yours, having it as an acquisition aspect, but still like you said, giving them a taste is probably the best way, especially for someone when you're doing limited drops. Plus, the manpower to just launch limited drops on Amazon would be a pain.
For sure.
But so from a marketing perspective, it's very simple to showcase. Well, I would say it's simple, but it's simple to showcase how what your differentiator is from your competition. You also mentioned that you see your company culture as a differentiator, which is also very interesting. From an operational side, it's always like the guys behind the scenes, right? So like the supply chain guy never gets enough credit. How do you think that the operational side, supply chain, inventory, all that fun stuff, like what's the differentiator there from that kind of perspective as opposed to what you obviously believe your competition's doing?
So to clarify, you're saying, how do I see supply chain as a differentiator for Goodr?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, for us, I think it's funny you mentioned like supply chain as kind of the supporting character. And I feel like, I think it was on your podcast. Someone was talking about being an offensive lineman. If it wasn't you, it was another podcast, but someone brought up this idea of like the supply chain team is like the offensive lineman on the football field. And I used to play offensive line, and I actually think that makes a lot of sense. It used to be, right? Like that was, I think, the old school mentality of, no one hears your name until you mess up and you make a mistake. I think that has changed in the last few years with everything that's gone on and the disruption of global supply chains. There's been a lot of talk about, is just-in-time dead? Is the whole mentality around inventory management shifting? And I think it is, partially because I think supply chain is starting to be seen as a strategic advantage. It's something you can compete on. Like I said, we're competing on our culture. We want to compete on our operations and our supply chain. I don't think we're quite there yet. We have a lot of work to do around that. But if you can deliver an incredible customer experience, and yeah, it might cost you a little bit more, but if you're winning customers over on being able to get them sunglasses, in a couple days, like an Amazon network without using Amazon, that's a competitive advantage, and that will draw people in. And I think more importantly, that'll bring them back. That may not get your first buy, but it will get your second, your third buy, with those customers if they know, like, hey, this company has their I was going to say somebody has their shit together and can get me these, this pair of sunglasses I need for my 5K on Saturday. If you have that reliability built in, then that is a strategic advantage. That is something that customers are looking for. And it gets you out of the supporting role, gets you out of the shadows, and you're really starting to help drive revenue as well, as opposed to just cutting costs.
It's a very good point. Greg, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you're super busy. I would love to give you the opportunity here to let everyone know where they can find out a little bit more about yourself, and then obviously Goodr as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, I'm pretty simple. I'm not a big social media person, but I am on LinkedIn. You're welcome to hit me up if you'd like. Goodr, check out our website. It's goodr.com. You can find us in the retail network I mentioned, but if you want the freshest availability and and to make use of our awesome supply chain, come check out our website and buy a new pair.
Beautiful. Greg, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, everyone else, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you do all the usual rate, review, subscribe, blah, blah, all that same stuff. Or head over to YouTube or Ecommerce Show or wherever else you decide to listen to this. And as usual, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you all next time. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ecomm Show. Head over to ecommshow.com to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on the BlueTuskr YouTube channel. The Ecomm Show is brought to you by BlueTuskr, a full-service digital marketing company specifically for e-commerce sellers looking to accelerate their growth. Go to BlueTuskr.com now for more information. Make sure to tune in next week for another amazing episode of the Ecomm Show.